Dr. Mary Lippitt is a world-renowned expert and speaker in the areas of leadership, strategic thinking, and change implementation. Dr. Lippitt is the developer of the Leadership Spectrum Profile and an award-winning author of Brilliant or Blunder: 6 Ways Leaders Navigate Uncertainty, Opportunity, and Complexity.
Hi and welcome. Today we're here with Dr. Mary Lippitt and we'll be talking about making change stick using situational mindsets. Welcome, Mary. How you doing?
Doing great. Thank you so much. Good to be here. How are you doing?
I am doing great.
Fantastic.
We have talked about change quite a bit in the past, and we have explored how fast change happens. With this acceleration in change, how do we handle change using situational mindsets?
Well, I think the first thing we have to recognize is that what we've been doing in the past is not working. What we have to recognize is that the success rate of change is very low. It's between 9 and 30%. So we have to make some changes. And part of the issue, I think, is to make sure that we understand that the full extent of the change that we're introducing. I think there are some changes that can be done in a short period of time. But even what we might consider to be minor changes have so many ramifications that we really need to be more aware of what we're asking of people and make sure that we have thought this thing through, and not just the launch, it's the full execution. Because what we have found is that the tension really is on the launch rather than thinking about all the details that are necessary to coordinate to make sure that the change really is successful. And I think that there's another key shift that we need to make in the way we handle change, and that is to recognize that once we launch the change, we need to make the mid-course corrections. We can't just stick with an idea and assume that any deviation is some kind of repudiation of the change initiative. So, these mid-course corrections are very important. And I think another aspect in terms of changing our attitude to how we approach change is to make sure that we don't rely on charisma or social events or taglines or banners to convey the change. What we really need to do is to be able to explain the benefit of that change from all different points of view. What has happened historically is that there's one benefit that's being sought, and that benefit is articulated over and over again, which makes sense so people can grasp it. But when you have a large audience, by large audience, I'm talking about an audience more of 6 or 7, you have to recognize that different people are going to think that the benefits they desire are different. So we have to be willing to engage in a conversation to make sure that everyone is on board with change.
So we cannot just initiate a change and walk away and think that everybody is going to follow suit. We have to kind of open up their minds, it sounds. How do we do that?
Well, I think that one of the ways that we need to start thinking about change is not to label people. You're either a change supporter or you're a resistor. And I think that sometimes these labels really create gulfs between people, and it stops the flow of information that can make the change successful. One of the interesting things about situational mindsets is that they, in addition to identifying a goal that a specific mindset is currently desiring, it's interesting to notice that 3 of the mindsets really have one attitude toward change, while the other 3 mindsets have a very different attitude. So there's actually a wheel, and the 3 mindsets on the left of that wheel, which I call the left hemisphere, really think rapid change is the only way to go. And that risk is great because risk is what will give us rewards. And that the information and the facts that they most highly value are externally derived facts. And so these are the change agents that pushing, suggesting, recommending, identifying change. But what they think is that they tend to overlook that the other 3 mindsets on the right basically have a very different attitude toward change. They don't don't like rapid change. They want managed evolutionary change. And they don't really like more risk. In fact, what their goal would be is to reduce risk. And in addition, the data, the facts that they prioritize as most critical are the internal facts, not the external facts. So in addition to having the actual discussion about what the change is, what the change process is also something that needs to be more fully discovered and managed, because this tendency to label one group as crazy and basically get ready and start firing away right away, and then the generalization on the other side is they get ready and they aim, and they never do anything. So how do we merge these two different change orientations and create goodwill between those different mindsets is something that I think is new and important in the change process to make sure that change actually is successfully executed.
And you mentioned the different mindsets, and it reminds me to go back to your book and really dig in a little bit deeper on those mindsets. But when you speak about goodwill between the different orientations toward change, what do you mean by that?
I mean that there's a sense that everyone is working together, that there is not a sense of competition, that there's joint planning, there's joint exploration, that there's a sense that everyone's input is being respected. Even if I am not of the same level or the same years of experience with the organization, that my input is truly valued, and that there's a decision that's either articulated or is understood that we won't move forward until we're all have some level of comfort. So this isn't necessarily going to be, I'll listen to you, but I'm not going to change my thinking. I'll give you a couple minutes to talk about it, but that's, this is a done deal. So you just have to get on board. So the goodwill is basically in a sense that we're in this together, and that we're going to come up with something that works for everyone and that will be successful.
So we may actually have to build goodwill. It won't happen organically oftentimes. Is that accurate?
Correct. And it's interesting that goodwill is something that is not that hard to build. Again, when one person listens to you and then can either agree with you or talk about the concerns they have, that open discussion, that open-mindedness basically creates a comfort level that you understand my point of view, I understand your point of view, and then we could find ways to come to a common understanding. So goodwill is something that might not be easy to articulate. Some people will call it engagement, some people will call it trust. Whatever the term, it is a willingness to work together with respect and comfort, that I'm not going to have something forced on me. Because the minute you talk about change, people really have a tendency to think fearful, or what are they going to do to me? And this whole process of listening to each other means that I can have some comfort that the worst thing that I might imagine is not going to happen to me.
And this all really goes back to having that awareness, doesn't it?
Correct. You need to be aware of where people are coming from, what the situation is, and understand that what we might have thought they would have agreed with, 6 months ago is not necessarily what they will agree with today, because things have changed, their thinking has changed because of their situations and their circumstances have changed.
So Mary, what can we do to make sure that change happens, that it sticks?
Well, I think the first thing is to recognize that change is a process, that it can't happen overnight. I think that we also have to understand that change is something that has to be articulated through a variety of benefits, not just one. So somebody may really want to have cost savings, while another person may want to have growth, while another person may want to have a better sense of innovation and creativity. So I think that we have to be able to articulate what the benefits are from multiple perspectives, And I think we really need to spend more time planning for the execution of the change and not just the launch. We really have to understand how to make things go smoothly. I was working with one organization that had a wonderful change, did a wonderful job of marketing it, launching it, but they hadn't thought about changing some scripts in the call center. Those details cost them. So we have to do better at thinking about all the details. Ask ourselves the questions, what could go wrong? What are the details that could sidetrack us or derail us? So I think that we really need to be more aware of the process, put the investment of time up front in planning it effectively, and making sure, again, that everyone is fully on board and committed to making this a success. Because when something goes awry, someone's willingness to go above and beyond the call of duty can make all the difference in the world. So that level of commitment is critically important.
So Mary, I can really see how this all works together, having the awareness of the situation and then using that situational mindset to really not only implement change, but then infuse it throughout the whole process. Do you have any other thoughts to help us move through change using a situational mindset?
Well, first I'd say do not think that silence means agreement. Silence can be interpreted that way at times, but sometimes people are silent because they have not yet understood what the change is, and they really need to have more information. And again, I would really encourage people to recognize that change is going to be a continual process. It's not something that's one and done, so that we're going to be living in a period of change, and that we really need to learn how to do it well and make sure that we think through not only the initiation of the change, but what the buy-in process is, what the planning process is, what the execution process is, and also take the time to celebrate the success. Because if we don't keep people informed along the way that the change is going well, people will lose their commitment, and that can derail the change.
Sure. And change is hard.
It is very hard.
It's hard to implement and hard to make it stick. But you've given us some things to think about today. So I appreciate you sharing all of the information that you have for us on how to making change stick by using situational mindsets. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you. My pleasure.